Howdy folks, I'm Hank Sheffer, and welcome to another true life story right here with Larry Hedrick on Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.
You know, we've all got our Crazy Jake stories, and we've already talked about those on previous episodes and stuff, and it'd be fun to go back and look that up, but I know that Crazy Jake loved to intimidate people, but he was not a guy that I would ever be that concerned about. If he was going to bump you off, he'd have somebody else do it. He wouldn't do it himself. And but this particular time, Tom and I went out to Quarter Circle U, where he had permission to leave his vehicle because he used to work for him, you know. We were going to a certain place, but we didn't get very far, and he said, well, let's go over here to this particular place and see if Crawford's doing anything. And we approached what was called Dutch Canyon, not very far north of Peralta Canyon, and all of a sudden, up pops this guy with a little automatic pistol, both hands holding it on Tom, and you know, and and I immediately dropped my hand down on my pistol and just rested my hand on the butt of the pistol. If he shot Tom, I was going to shoot him, you know. But he recognized who Tom was, and that made all the difference in the world. He just bent over backwards with Tom, and Chuck had a little boy with him, a little kid. I don't know if he was related or what. I don't believe he was even a teenager. He might have been 12, might have been 13, somewhere in there. And it turned out it was a girl. And we went over to his cave. He showed us his pit where he had platinum. You know, when the Historical Society cleaned up his house, the garage had all kinds of beakers and stuff in there and chemicals where he could test various rocks and stuff and tell what kind of mineralization was in these rocks. And he claimed he had a pit that had platinum in it. And this cave was a pretty good sized cave, and he had sleeping quarters in there and everything. But he evidently was going to abandon the place for a while. And he asked if he couldn't have some help, so we tied up our horses, and we went in the cave and started carrying stuff. The kid was carrying stuff, he was carrying stuff, Tom and I were all carrying various things. We walked across the wash, and he had buried in the ground 2 55-gallon drums with the tops that you could snap on and lock. And we stuffed all this stuff in those cans, and he put the tops back on it. And I kind of believe that stuff is probably still there to this day, because it wasn't all that long after that he died, you know, within a year or so. And I've never been back out there, and I don't care. I didn't see anything going in there that I wanted, you know. But, well, Chuck, you know, Chuck was just another Dutch hunter and a con man. I got to put it that way. You know, in the years that I've been associated with the museum, I have heard stories from literally hundreds of people that come in the museum and show you pictures of a heart or something that looks like something that's about that big around, you know, like you'd go out there and find this, you know, but I found it, you know, here it is, and this is one of the clues and all that sort of stuff, and it's hard to contain yourself. I remember one time Clay was telling a story about a guy that came in there with this piece of old leather with this map drawn on it, and he wanted a considerable amount of money for it. He wanted to sell it to the museum, and if I remember right, he was wanting $5,000, but he wouldn't let Clay see it, you know. And Clay says, you know, you can't expect me to pay that kind of money if I can't see the thing. So he laid it out there on the countertop at the museum, and Clay looked at it and he says, you know, this is a really old map, huh? Oh yeah, this is hundreds of years old. He says, well, you really shouldn't have drawn that in a ballpoint pen. But this is kind of the guy that we're talking about here with the Bob Wards and the Chuck Crawfords and stuff. This was the first time I ever had a gun pulled on me, you know, and it was exciting for a little bit, you know. It's something to do.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.